Welcome to the One Room at a Time podcast. I'm your host, Atticus LeBlanc, founder and CEO of PadSplit, which is the country's largest co-living marketplace. I have worked in the affordable housing sector for over 20 years as a property owner, developer, and entrepreneur. I am excited that you are tuning in today. This podcast features housing and policy leaders who are addressing the challenges and opportunities around America's growing housing crisis. We'll have spirited debates and focus on practical solutions that can truly make a difference. Today, I'm excited to welcome someone who's been part of the PadSplit story from the very beginning and a good friend of mine, Heather Wren. Heather became what she calls an accidental landlord back in 2007 when she and her husband couldn't sell their home. One Section 8 tenant later, they realized real estate could change their lives. Over time, they built a portfolio of more than 20 properties, giving their family the freedom to move to Spain and live life on their own terms. Now, between beach days and European adventures, Heather helps others learn how to make co-living work, not just as an investment, but as a way to build community and connection. Heather, welcome to the show. Where are we catching you today?
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So where are you today?
I'm in my apartment in Valencia, Spain. I
Okay.
shoot all the kids out and made them go away because
Okay.
even though they swore to me they could be quiet, I didn't believe them.
It's parenting 101. I'm sure we could both share a lot of parenting advice as we are both working from home more often than not, and dealing with interesting background noise. So if you hear anything running around in the background, hopefully it's just a kid. So Heather, I did a brief intro about your role. I think for the audience's sake, let's maybe walk through a little bit more of your background in detail. Tell us how you got into real estate from the beginning.
You know, I started off on the right foot. I was 25 and I was working at a life insurance brokerage firm, kind of trying to decide what I was going to be when I would grow up, like waiting for that epiphany to hit me and tell me what I was going to be. And my best friend bought a fixer-upper in East Atlanta. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. I should do that too. Because rent's about the same as a mortgage, right? And so I bought this cute little 3-1 ranch that was a foreclosure and very quickly realized that having a rent and mortgage that are the same does not mean you're going to be able to make it. And so I panicked and got on roommates.com and got some roommates to be in the other rooms so that way I could afford the bills. And it worked out well for me. 4 years later, it was down to just me and my brother living in the house. I did make my brother pay me rent. And I had been dating Alan for a couple of years by then. And I was like, all right, we're going to move in together. And so I let my brother stay in the house. And that's kind of like my first experience landlording. And I probably did everything wrong. I didn't have a lease with him. I didn't switch any of the utilities over into his name. So probably every couple of months I would have to text him and be like, pay the electricity bill. You're going to ruin my credit, man.
But this is your brother, right? I mean,
yes.
So, okay.
So not that bad, but he couldn't afford the rent either. So he brought in his friends to live in the house. So there's like always this herd of 20-year-old boys in the house, always somebody sleeping on the couch. I don't know who half of them are. But, you know, they mostly paid the rent, so it was fine. That went on for a few years. And then Alan and I decided I would sell my place. He would sell his place. And then we would get our place. So we listed his house on the market, his condo on Ponce where we lived. And I told my brother he had to go and all of the friends. And we started kind of fixing it up after work. Well, brothers, being how they do, he left like all these tubs of mementos and baseball cards. And he moved to Portland and he said, all right, when I come back, I'll put him in mom and dad's house. So I'm trying to get this house ready to list. And it had like this glorified crawl space underneath it. And I'm trying to like shove all these tubs in there. And the lawnmower is right by the door because I pull it out to mow the lawn. So I push the lawnmower in the back of the crawl space, get all of his tubs in. I'm like, yes, all right, I'm almost done. Well, I come up to the house a few days later and there's just black smoke coming up through all the vents.
Oh, God.
A window's busted out, black staining. The front door is knocked in. And like I walk up to the door and there's a note and it says, your house caught on fire. Please call the Atlanta Fire Department.
Oh,
And I
Lord.
was like, oh no, the neighbor comes over. Heather, I wish I had your number. I was asleep the other night. And then all of a sudden there was this loud boom. And I looked out the window and your house is on fire and there's smoke pouring out of it. Um, so I consider catching your house on fire as being like a bad investor, I'm pretty sure. I didn't realize the fumes from the lawnmower were dissipating when it was by the door. And when I put it in the back, they built up and they built up. And when the pilot light on the water heater turned on, it just exploded at the bottom. So,
Uh, I've never heard that story, and we've known each
well,
other for
I'm trying to keep it secret, but I decided now I'm old enough that I would let it out.
uh
Yeah.
that's wild. And so what happened? So this is 2007, 2008-ish?
Well, no,
When are we?
2009.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of particular about insurance. We've had discussions about this before, both because I worked at an insurance place, but also they tried to deny my claim because the house was vacant for more than 30 days and I didn't tell them. So on the side, I'm over here fighting with them. And in the meantime, Alan and I are living in his condo, keeping it perfectly clean, leaving for showings. We finally get my house fixed up, put it on the market, and it doesn't go well. Like the market is just, and probably the nail in the coffin was a guy at Alan's complex had to transfer for work and sold his unit for $75,000 less than he paid for it.
Ouch.
So, yeah, I had been paying the mortgage for 8 months without any tenants in it. And we decided, okay, maybe we're not going to buy our own place together. I was able to convince him to move into my house because it was fresh and remodeled and how he liked it. And it was under the condition that when we rented his condo out, we got a property manager because he had seen how well I managed properties. It was all like, no, no.
So the house exploding gave you the
Mhm.
confidence to keep going,
Mhm.
and you thought, oh well, this worked out so well, I'll just do this again.
Really, we thought, all right, we needed to save up money for a new house. We still wanted our house. And we bought something new together in 2012. And then I did better this time. I rented my house out to a friend, not a family member. I did get a lease, and I put the utilities in his name. So we're living in our new house together. And we thought, man, what would happen if every time we wanted a new house, we just saved up the money for the down payment and then kept the old ones? Like in 40 years when we retire, we might have like 4 houses. And so I started looking it up on the internet, and that's where I found Bigger Pockets. And we started reading about rates of return and what was a good investment. They told you at the time you needed to make $200 per house profit. And that was a good goal, and that's what you should go for. So Alan and I are like, hey, maybe we could do this. So we started saving money up again to buy another rental property because
Okay.
at this point in time, I hated my job. I had been there for 15 years. I was kind of over it. Um, and this woman named Pam was a friend of a friend, and she had, oh wait, rewind. The property manager for the condo said, hey, we've got a great tenant for you, but she has a Section 8 voucher. Would you be willing to accept that? And we said, I don't even know what that means. Sure. Okay. Because he did all the paperwork for us. And
Yep.
so she moved in to our Posh Ponce condo, and enjoyed it. She moved because she wanted her kid to go to the, what's it called now, Midtown High School.
Okay.
She thought that was the best one. So she was like, oh, the school system. So we said, okay, great. So then my friend's friend Pam had a house that she needed to sell because she was building her new construction dream home and needed a little bit more cash. But she wanted the house to go to somebody who would keep her Section 8 tenant in there because Pam grew up in subsidized housing and she didn't want to disrupt Sylvia's life that way. And so I got this sweet deal on this house that had a tenant in it for 7 years, making $736 a month. And, Al and I thought that was a great deal. That's extra $700 a month. And at that point in time, we were really motivated to get more houses.
Yeah. So you knew pretty early on that you wanted to kind of keep going with this strategy and ultimately build some passive income from real estate. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair to say. We didn't bring a lot with us from the United States to Spain, like mementos and stuff, but I found this is really funny. This is, you can see it, it's called the
Yeah.
Wren Escape Plan. And it's got
Okay.
the house that we originally owned. Then when I went under contract under a house on Eastham Street, and we were saying, okay, we put half the money in reserves and half the money we save. And it goes through and talks about coffee stain, how many houses we can buy. And then it says at the bottom, like, we're going to have 20 houses by 2023. And then that will give me enough money to replace my income.
That's
And
incredible.
yeah, so we've had this vision, for 11 years now. And I carry this around with me to like remind me what started, it didn't happen this way at all. And it was a lot different, but this was the first spark for us in the idea that that real estate really could make a difference in our lives.
And when did you write that?
2014, when I went under contract on the Easton Street house.
Okay. And then tell us a little bit more about the Easton Street house, because that's basically part of how you and I met. But yeah, I mean, I remember you and I met at Chickamauga in 2017, right?
We did. Rick brought me over there and said, oh, there's this guy Atticus you should meet. He's doing this really cool stuff.
So yeah, so to catch the audience up, so the first prototype pad split ever was on a street in Atlanta called Chickamauga Avenue, and there were just some incredible stories that I had experienced coming out of that house, and it seemed like not only am I making more money, but I'm also able to transform people's lives. And so the next thing I did was start calling people I knew to come tour them through this house and show them how it worked. Heather was literally among the first 3 people to tour that house. And when was that? Was that November or so of 2017, something like that?
That's about right. I think it was a little earlier because it wasn't that cold yet.
Okay. And then, yeah, tell us what got you hooked, and how did this lead to your becoming the first pad split host, at least other than the one that I owned, which I don't really count.
Well, I bought that house for $35,000 and Wells Fargo funded it with a mortgage. So, I mean, I put like $5,000 down and maybe like $12,000 in rehab. And I had a Section 8 tenant for almost 5 years. And he was a custodian for Fulton County. And his daughter didn't do well. And so he had custody of 4 of his grandchildren. So he had a Section 8 voucher. And he lived in that house. He was great. It was always clean. At Landlord, it's easy. I like this. And his daughter got better, took back custody of the children. So he lost his 4-bedroom voucher and had to move out. So, I went by the office. I got another tenant. And she lived with her mom a couple of blocks away. And she had been on the waiting list for the voucher for years. She moved in with her children. And I think she really lived there maybe 3 months. And she decided, nope, I miss my mom. It's much easier to care for 4 children living in the house with my mom, not just being that far away. And so she moved out. And I went into this house and they had just eaten it alive. And I have kids. I know what it's like. Sure. But the walls were scratched up. There were, finger marks all over everything. And that actually happened to be the same month that you took me to go see Chickamauga.
Got it.
And yeah. And after that headache of kind of having somebody in there who I had to do a lot of stuff for, was always calling me and complaining, I thought, I could try this. It's just one house. How hard could it be?
Nice. And so, and I think for the audience, people who are rental investors probably understand, but I think the broader audience probably doesn't appreciate when we talk about turn costs and the amount of money that it takes to essentially renovate a property in between tenants, even if you've had someone who's been there 5+ years, and in some cases especially so. But a lot of times it's not even necessarily damage all the time. Sometimes it's just wear and tear, but that can happen within a couple of weeks of someone's move-in. So when that person was there in that house originally, pre-pad split for 3 months, what do you think you spent, or do you have an idea out of pocket on that turn, or is it just one of those memories you try to suppress and push way down so you don't have to think about it?
Well, whenever Robert left and he had been there for a while. I didn't spend very much on the turn at all. I mean, it was some paint touch up, and that was
Mhm.
it. He just took really good care of the house. And then when the second lady left, I mean, thousands of dollars. And then at that
Yeah.
point in time, I already had the expense. I know I needed to replace the HVAC system. So at that point in time, it was $5,000 or $6,000 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not only the money, it's also the time. How long does it take you to do the renovations, and how
Sure.
long is it open while you're waiting to find the next tenant? And that whole time you're not making any money off.
Yeah. So both your turn cost, the cost that it actually takes to fix the property up, but also your vacancy loss,
Yeah.
uh, meaning the money that you're not receiving for 1, 2, 3, 4 or more months, but you still have expenses to pay for over that period of time. And so because of those two factors, you decide, okay, well, I'll take this guy Atticus at his word. God bless you, but I'm
I don't know.
I'm
I feel
glad it
like
worked out
maybe I got the
okay.
better end of that deal, because I remember calling you probably 3 times a week on FaceTime. And it was like that stereotypical renovation show where you open up the wall and there's a pipe in there. Oh my God, Atticus, what do I do? There's a pipe in the wall. Like, I had only ever done paint and carpet kind of rehabs before, and I didn't even do them. I just like watched Jeff do it and stand back and be like, that looks good. So to close off one wall and open a doorway, which is the only renovations we really did there, was,
Mhm.
a big step forward for me.
And
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about those early years and just clearly the PadSplit, the platform now is much more built out. In the early years, it was probably closer to me in a sketchbook or an Excel spreadsheet. But yeah, tell us a little bit about like what stood out to you from those early years. What were some of the uh, key learnings for you, whether it's about the house, the operations, or just human behavior? What were the things that really stood out to you?
Well, I mean, to be honest, and I kind of hate to say this publicly, but when PadSplit first started, we were spoiled. All we did was give you a house. Somebody put the utilities in their name. Somebody got on Craigslist and posted it over and over again. Um, John would have to like physically show the house to people to make sure they approved of it, because you didn't have a website and there wasn't really a way to advertise it. I remember in that house, there was the Darlington closed down, and there was a guy,
Mm.
Chris, that came from the Darlington, and John just like carried his boxes and took him over there and helped him move in. Um, we heard
And
hiding our hair about anything.
this is John who worked for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Darlington, for those who don't know, is a famous, infamous 600 unit apartment complex in Atlanta that has gone through several cycles. Uh, but yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think in those early years we were still figuring out what we were doing or what good management looked like. Uh, Whereas now, over the intervening years, we've put out a lot of information trying to educate hosts, and hosts have been educating each other as well. And it's much more systematic a process today than it ever was way back when it was shoestrings, duct tape, and a lot of sweat. Heather, what about like some of the human stories? I know that a lot of traditional landlords, because I had spoken to them and still do now, uh, think, oh, this is just a terrible idea. Like you should never have strangers living together. It's going to be an absolute mess. Uh, and I sometimes struggle to convince folks that no, it actually works better, not just because of that vacancy loss and turn cost thing, but even the strangers living together works out usually much better than you ever anticipate. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your engagement early on and some of those human stories that stick with you.
I mean, one of the stories that I think of most often was this cranky old man. He was in the first room in this house in Decatur. And anytime you went in and out, if you didn't close the door quietly or the screen door shut, he would yell at you. And he was just like a cantankerous old man. Um, And I didn't know very much about him. I know he had come from like a partnership program. And so they paid his first year of rent. And then after the first year, he was struggling because his disability check wasn't enough to cover the rent. And it was like, oh man, how do we get this guy in a place to stay when his disability check is so low that he couldn't even get senior assisted housing?
Mm.
That was kind of a struggle. And so I had been working with some different programs to try and find him a place to live. And one of the roommates that had my number called me and said, Heather, we don't really want to say anything, but we can't help it anymore. And apparently he had been so ill that he couldn't go up the stairs to get to the restrooms. And so he was peeing in bottles. And then the roommates were taking care of it and cleaning it for him. They were washing his clothes, and it had been a couple of months. And they were just kind of waiting for him to perk back up. And it didn't get any better. And so I had to go talk to him. And he kind of asked him about family, who can help you. You should go to the hospital, maybe. You're peeing blood. And he was just really reluctant and, didn't really trust any of the systems that were available to him. And he alluded to the fact that he had kind of abandoned his family and moved to Atlanta and then had been homeless for years and just lost touch with his family and was kind of having some regret about it. Anyway, we called Adult Protective Services and we were able to convince him to go to the hospital. And I had gotten in touch with his family and they literally came over and they tried to take him from the house. And the roommates were all like up in arms. You can't take him. He's a grown up. He doesn't want to go with you. He doesn't like you, and they shoot him away. So he ends up in the hospital and we thought he was doing better. And I get a call at like 6 a.m. one morning and it's the doctors and they're doing CPR and they're like, can we stop? This is hopeless. And I'm like, why are you calling me? And they're like, well, that's who he put down for his next of kin is you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. And oddly enough, while we were checking him in, he was joking and he said, oh, no, I take the blood of a young child to stay alive. I want everything. I was like, oh, no, don't stop. You wanted it all. Yeah. And so that was, everybody in the house was just so upset. They thought he was getting better. And there was this whole entire layer of relationships and community there that I didn't even know that was going on. Where they made themselves their family when that wasn't really, because they weren't close with their own families.
That's incredible. Yeah, I've never actually heard you tell that story before, as long as we've known each other.
I couldn't really talk about it for a long time.
Yeah.
And especially because afterwards I called his family and I told them. And his son was like, okay, I'm going to come down and get his belongings. And his son came down and literally took his ID and his disability check and left and nothing else.
Oh,
No
gosh.
pictures, no anything. He was just in and out in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an important theme though. And it's the first time I've heard this story, but I know for you personally and for myself and a number of our hosts, I don't think the outside world really appreciates the depth of some of these relationships, and it's a great illustration of that. And why I really I get upset when I think the broader world just labels landlords as evil, or just has this view of what a landlord tenant typical relationship is, because they usually hear the most contentious elements that maybe make the news. But it's certainly been my experience, and I know it's been yours, that you really develop close relationships with a lot of these individuals, and you know them for years. And particularly in a PadSplit situation, like you're in their lives sometimes 24/7, 365. And I don't know if there's a better example of that than, I mean, the fact that this gentleman listed you as his emergency contact when the hospital's calling. That's pretty incredible. But I mean, it's really just a testament to you, Heather, for being able to build those relationships and the type of person that you are. But maybe tell us a happier story. One of my favorites But it's similar, and I think like as a host, anyone has, or a landlord probably as well, but particularly as a pad split host, what keeps me engaged, and I know I say a lot about a lot of our hosts, is they come for the income, and
Mhm.
in your case, you had this plan with your husband to try to get to financial independence, but they come for the income and with these financial goals in mind, but they stay for the impact. And when you realize the really integral part that you can play in someone's life and how much you can dramatically change things for them, then it ends up being really addictive, candidly, as a host to be able to pursue your financial independence and know that you're changing someone's life for the better. So you know the story I'm getting to, which is Amber's. Um, and I only learned of the Amber story because for those of you listening, I had hired Heather to stage a house for me, and you told me that, oh well, Amber, who was the project manager on the job, has actually been a PadSplit member. Which I had no idea about, and yeah. So tell us a little bit about the background story for Amber, and how that went.
You make it sound like I'm such a nice person and have so many feelings. But that's like a really, like being a landlord gives you kind of like a hard heart, and you have to have boundaries set up in a lot of situations or you'll get taken advantage of. And so I had this house down off of Moreland Avenue. And whenever I needed something at the house, oh, can somebody bring the package in? Can somebody let the cable guy in? I ordered a replacement shelf. Amber would say, me, I'll do it. I can do it. And this went on for about a year. And even like one time, she sent me some pictures of the yard. And she's like, oh, well, Tori and I just trimmed all the bushes and raked all the leaves and cleaned the whole yard up. Wow, that is like what a sense of ownership of the home. So I went there one day for something, and she comes up to me and she says, Heather, your cleaners suck. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. And she hands me a business card and it says, B Squared Cleaners on it. She's like, I started a cleaning company and I want you to let me clean some of your houses. Having the cold hard heart, I was all like, I only want a pad split tenant in all my other houses, knowing everybody else's business. I'm not really sure that's a great idea. So I let her just start doing room turns initially. Pretty low impact,
Now, what is a room turn for people who don't
A
know?
room turn is when somebody moves out and you need to change the bedding and clean the fan and get it ready for the next person.
Okay.
So I let her start doing room turns, and that was okay. And whenever she had earned about $600, I was like, okay, well, that was a nice trial period. But if I'm going to let you keep working in my houses, you need an LLC and you need liability insurance, because it's not
Okay.
going to let anybody in my house like that. And 3 days later, she just emailed it back to me. I didn't tell her how to do it or anything. She just figured it out on her own. And I was like, okay, that's some initiative. So I let her start cleaning more and more of my houses and let the other people go. And I will tell you that somebody who lives in a pad split is the best person to clean a pad split, because they know what drives them crazy in their own home.
Sure.
And so I think at that time I had 8 or 9 houses, and Amber was cleaning them all for me. She was doing the room turns, and she really just did a great job. I had her start doing side projects like furnishing houses and other things for me as she learned what it was like to manage a pad split. And I checked with her recently. She's cleaning over 100 houses a month now, has on average 30 room turns, and she's also helping manage 23 different properties for hosts, being the point person on the chat and handling the relationship with the members.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think to give the real before after, did you know that Amber prior to PadSplit had been living in her car?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And whenever she came to me and she offered to clean, she didn't tell me then either.
Mm.
I will say that when I took her to the first house and showed her which one she would be cleaning and talked about the standards and what I wanted in each house, at the end, she hugs me hard, and I'm all like stiff, like, oh, I'm not a hugger, and she was just so appreciative and so happy. She's like, I'm sorry, I'm a hugger. She's like, I'm so excited to start this. And at the time, I didn't realize, exactly why she was so happy about it.
And that was 4 or 5 years ago, is that right?
2022.
Okay. Um, and yeah, I as I learned Amber's story much later was that when her grandfather passed away, Amber ended up being homeless, living in her car, and was taking a shower at a friend's pad split when she learned about it, and ended up with Heather. Thankfully, that I think it was just sheer fate maybe that she ended up in your home, and now several years later has this thriving business. And from what I hear, she wants to become a PadSplit host now as well with her own properties. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been house shopping with her. We've gotten her pre-qualified for a mortgage. Unfortunately, at this point in time, it's like the price of the house has outpaced what she's
Sure.
able to afford. And so now, well, I got to earn more so that I can afford the house. And, kind of like chasing it that way. But she's ready. She's ready.
Yeah, no, she's an amazing human, and we are really fortunate to have both you and Amber as part of the PadSplit ecosystem here in the Atlanta area. Well, for now, with that happy note, it's been a fun start to our conversation. So let's pause here, and we will pick things back up in part 2, where we'll talk more about what you have learned as a PadSplit host and what's next in your journey as a real estate investor. For our listeners, you can find Heather on LinkedIn. We will link her profile in the show notes. And don't forget to join us for part 2 of this episode of One Room at a Time. Many more fun stories coming up.